Welcome back. In this video, we'll look at the difference between the Stateless widget and the Stateful widget. Now, if you create a new project, I've called mine Flutter_Stateless_Stateful, you get to this template that's automatically created for you. And you will see something that says my app extends Stateless widget and my home page extends Stateful widget. So there's Stateless and there's Stateful widgets. And then if you hold down your control button and you hover over Stateless widget, you can see that Stateless widget extends widget, which means Stateless widget is in fact a widget. And if I hover over that one, it also says extends widget. So there's basically two types of widgets. There's Stateless widgets and there's Stateful widgets. So what is the difference between the two? So in this video, we'll look at the difference between Stateless widget and Stateful widget. So let's just look at what is state. According to Flutter, state is the information that can be read synchronously. So while you're looking at it there on the screen, can be read when the widget is built and might change during the lifetime of the widget. So if we just look at the screen there, the top widget there will never change. You can see there's a button. And if I click the button, this text view there changes. So if I go down a bit, you can see the top is this one, Flutter demo homepage. If I go down a bit, you can see there's the title. So it's this Flutter demo homepage. Then if I go down, there's a text widget that says you have pushed the button this many times. And there's a text widget that says the counter value. So in this case, it's 5. And if I click it, it goes to 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So state is information that you see on your user interface. Some of them will not be changing and some of them will be changing. So if you go back to the definition there, state is the information that can be read synchronously when the widget is built and might change during the lifetime of the widget. So if you look at these two texts or text widgets, the state for this one will never change, but the state for this one depends on the button that you click, and that one will actually change. A class, you can see this class my app is declared as a class, but it extends Stateless widget. This one is declared as a class, my homepage, and it extends Stateful widget. So a class becomes a Flutter widget when it is a subclass of either Stateful widget or Stateless widget. And these widgets override a method called build. This method build is an abstract method and it returns back a widget. So if you've got a Stateless widget or a Stateful widget, you can see both of them has got that build method. There's the build method for this one that you need to override. That build method accepts a build context and it returns back a widget. Same here. This build method accepts a build context and it sends back a widget. So the main task or the main job of a widget is then to lay out other widgets on the tree using the build method. Now, before creating a widget, the developer must then decide whether the state of that widget will change during the time or not. If the state changes at some point, then it means that something happened. For example, we clicked a button and the state of that specific widget has changed. So you basically need to ask yourself, is the widget that you are building immutable, which means it will never change, or is it mutable or dynamic in the sense that something might actually change during time? So this one will be dynamic or mutable, but this widget there, that text widget there, will be immutable. It will never change over time. And the decision that you make there basically translates into Flutter coding as a Stateless widget or a Stateful widget. Right, so let's create our own example here. I'm going to remove everything now, so I hope you understand what's state now, and we're going to have a look at how we can work with the Stateless and Stateful widgets. In order for me to use either a Stateless or a Stateful widget, I can basically just start typing ST. And you can see there it picks up Flutter Stateful widget or a Flutter Stateless widget. So let's start with a Stateless widget. And let's name this my app that I'm calling there. Let's name my app exactly the same. So it's a class, my app extends Stateless widget. And now what I want right at the beginning of this is not a container, but I want to start with a material app. So you'll remember in the previous videos that we did, we started everything right in there with a material app. So it's essentially doing exactly the same thing, but we are using a stateless widget now. So for this material app, let's have a home as the scaffold again, like we normally do. For the scaffold, let's have an app bar, and we're going to have the app bar just the title there. And let's say the text will be something like stateless and stateful. Now let's rerun this quickly. Right, so we are back at stateless and stateful. Now look at the following. Let's say I want to remove the two S's there. So I'm not going to click on the rerun. You can see I've not saved yet. Look at the screen there, and as soon as I click on save, you will see that the changes is effected immediately. So I'm going to say stateless, save again, and I can see the change within a second or two. And this function now, that's one thing about the stateless widget and the stateful widget that really helps us out here, is that it includes this hot reload function. So this hot reload, you can either click here, but it's built into Visual Studio Code so that as soon as you're saving, it runs the hot reload and it shows you the newest overview of your application on the phone. So you don't need to rerun it every time and wait a few seconds in order to get it. As soon as you save, it will automatically update your user interface. And that's really helpful. So let's add a few more here. We've got the scaffold. After the scaffold, or in the scaffold, we've got the app bar. Now let's go to the body of the scaffold. And for the body, I'm going to have a center widget. This center widget will have a child, which will be a column. This column will have children. And I will start off with a normal text widget. And that text widget will have the text saying, let's say, welcome to the app. Let's style it a bit. So let's use text style. The font size, let's make it 30. Now, as soon as I save, you can see welcome to the app is there. So maybe let's just add some, let's a sized box or something like that, or a container. And I'm going to set the height there as, let's say, a 20. Save it again, and it will give me some space. Let's also add a sized box at the end of that text. Right, so just a basic app, and this is now a stateless widget. Now let's create a stateful widget. So I'm going to go there and just start typing ST, and you can see there's stateful widget. So I'm going to use stateful widget. Let's call this one buttons. And now look at your stateful widget. There's actually, this is where the class starts and ends there. It also creates another class called button state extends state. Okay, so for now, just note that. We will come back to that later on. So it's a bit more coding than just your normal stateless widget. Okay, so we will explain now what is the difference between stateful and stateless. Let's just create something instead of a container here. Or let's use the container, but we'll have a child there, and the child will be a column again. And what I want to do now is to add this buttons stateful widget as part of this stateless widget. So in the children there, after the sized box, I will have buttons. So if I save now, nothing will basically show because it's an empty container with a column. So let's just add some children there, and I will start off with two text widgets. So basically the same as I did here. Let's just copy this one. I'm going to use it there, save, and I'll use another one there also, and save again. Now instead of the font size 30, let's make it a 20 there. And then instead of it saying welcome to the app, we will do something else here. So let's say we want to have a counter. So I'm going to go into the button state class, and in this class I will say var male counter equals 0, and I will also have a var female counter equals 0. So let's say we're building an app that will keep track of the amount of males entering the store and the amount of females that's entering the store. So what we want to do then is to display on this text the number of males, and then just display male counter. And for this one, we will say number of females, and we will have the female counter. So if I save this now, you will see number of males is 0 because we initialized it to 0. and the number of females is also 0. So now underneath these two, let's add 2 buttons. For this example, we will not go into buttons too deep, but we will do the basics of a button. So we're going to use a material button. Now, the interesting thing about this material button, if you hover over it or hold down Control there, you will see it extends a stateless widget. So now a material button is the most basic button in Flutter that you can get, and you can see there's a lot of things that you can customize on this specific button. So I'm going to go into this one and just change a few of the properties. So the onPressed is needed. You will see that it is required. So if I remove it there, you will hover over it and you can see there the parameter onPressed is required. So you will need to have an onPressed function there. So for the function, we can just use an anonymous function. So it's just to round opening and closing brackets and your curly brackets. Right, we'll come back to the onPressed function now. Let's make the height for this button a 50. Let's make the minimum width a 200. Let's make the child another text widget. I'm just going to save there. And let's make the text here male plus. So if I save again, it looks like that. And you can see it. It actually acts like a button already. Now let's just add some color. So let's set the color to colors.blue. That will change it to blue background. Then for this text, let's make the text color colors.white. So it stands out on the blue. Let's set the elevation to 10. And as soon as you set the elevation, you see that there will be some sort of shadow there at the bottom. So it seems 3D. And then let's just add that same sized box there in between the 2 buttons. So between the buttons and the text, we're going to have another button underneath this one. So sized box again. And let's take this material button and we use it there again. Now for this one will say female plus. And if we save now, we will have 2 buttons, male plus, and you can see it acts like a button, and female plus. But currently it's not doing anything. So if we want to have it do anything in the onPressed function, we need to do something. So what we can do is to go and say, well, we declared the variables male counter and female counter to be 0 at the top. And what we want to do, if it's clicked, female that's clicked, we're going to say the female counter plus plus. And for the male, it will be male counter plus plus. Now, if I save and I click on the buttons, you will see absolutely nothing happened. Now, for something to actually happen, we need to update the male counter and the female counter as soon as the button gets clicked. So we changed this, but this build method runs once, and then whatever is on the screen is on the screen. So even if I click this now, nothing happens, even though I am incrementing the male counter and the female counter. So in order to make this work, there's a method called setState. That method basically rebuilds your method, and that's like a refreshing tool. So we'll come back to that now. So in your onPressed, what we're going to do is to call setState, and then we're going to say male counter plus plus. We're going to do the same thing for this one. We're going to say setState, and then we're going to have female counter. Now if I save, all of a sudden number of females went to 15, and number of males went to 15, and number of female to 12. So it picks up the previous values that we had. So that was saved. So if you want to start with 0 again, you can just rerun the app. Right, and now if I click on male, it's 1. If I click on female, 1. And so it carries on. So now it is working as expected. So let's just have a look at what happened now. If you look at the difference now between a stateless widget and a stateful widget, you're going to use a stateless widget when you need to create a piece of user interface that's not going to change over time. Everything inside of this stateless widget, there's a sized box, there's a center, a column, there's a text that says welcome to the app. Nothing inside of this My App stateless widget will ever change. This text will stay the same. But if I go into the stateful widget, then I cannot say the same thing, because these two text widgets will definitely change. Although the size box will stay the same, the button's text on it will stay the same. Whatever happens inside of the method even stays the same, and for the rest it stays the same. But inside of this button widget or buttons widget, there's two widgets that will change. And because of that, we will be using a stateful widget. So you use a stateful widget when you need to create a piece of user interface that's going to change over time. In this case, the user interface will change every time that you click one of these two buttons. It will change those two text widgets. Now let's just have a look at this stateful widget now. This buttons class is the widget itself, and thus this widget will be inserted into the widget tree there. That's the widget that will get inserted. This button state is now the mutable state or the changeable state of this buttons widget. When Flutter then rebuilds the widget tree to refresh the user interface, the build method of this button state will be called. So it's this one. Subclasses like this button state of class called state. So this button state extends state, so it's a subclass of state. These type of classes is the only classes that gets access to this setState method. This setState method rebuilds the widget using this build method, and that acts like a refreshing tool for your user interface. And only what's inside of this build method will be refreshed. So very important, those two at the top will not be refreshed. But if I take them out there and I place them inside of the build method, you will see if I save, there's no problem at all, no errors, but it initializes to 0. And every time I click male plus or female plus, it stays at 0. And I just moved it 2 lines down. So what is happening here? Every time the setState method is called, I am marking male counter as something that should change, and it picks up it should change inside of these two text widgets. That means it needs to rebuild using the nearest build method, which is this one, and it will rebuild everything from that bracket up until the ending bracket. Everything will be rebuilt, and that includes these two variables. So I'm going to cut them out again, and they will initialize to 0 every time it runs, and that's why it's not updating. But just using it outside will work then, because they will not be rebuilt. Their values will stay the same, and it's just rebuilding everything in the build method. So buttons is the widget that will be inserted in the tree there, whereas button state is the state. And the state will survive a build, but everything in the build method will not. They will be rebuilt. Now let's look at another example. Right at the bottom, I'm going to have this class, and this is just this demonstration. Let's say we have a footer widget that we want to insert, let's say after this buttons. So I'm going to say footer widget there and save. And you can see it basically just look like that. So if I go back to the bottom, you will see the footer widget is a stateless widget. Now let's just have a look at this quickly. This stateless widget has got a const constructor, it's got a column, and it's got a row. Inside of this row, there's a const list of items, and these items are widgets. Now, because this list is declared as a constant, it's actually not needed to have these constants. They will automatically be constant. Now, if you look at this footer widget, it's something maybe in your app that you're going to place at the bottom, or on a web page you normally get that footer or the header or whatever, and it's something that will never change. So because it's something that will never change, it makes sense to have it a stateless widget. So now let's look at performance with stateless widgets and stateful widgets. Actually, performance, when looking at stateless widgets and stateful widgets, you will see no performance differences. In fact, you can actually see a stateless widget as a stateful widget just without the setState method. So I could have had this footer widget as a stateless widget or a stateful widget. It doesn't matter. In fact, I can actually convert this one to a stateful widget by using the control button, put the dot on it, and just say convert. And if I run it, absolutely nothing changes. It's still the same widget. Everything will still execute the same. Even though this is now a stateful widget, this build method will only run once because we're not changing anything there. So looking at performance, stateful widget and stateless widget works exactly the same way. So I'm just going to go back to a normal stateless widget. So why will we use stateless widget then instead of a stateful widget? So stateless widget, you can see it's a lot smaller. If I have the stateful widget, there's boilerplate code that adds to it. So that would be one reason why you would rather use stateless widget than stateful widget. So where does the performance part come in now? So now whenever you can create a widget, a stateless widget, with the const keyword as a constructor, so your constructor will be a constant, as well as some of the children there could be constants. If you're able to go to your footer widget now, so where did we call it? There we have it. And I am able to add a const keyword in front of it. It means that this footer widget will not be rebuilt, but would rather be reused. So now if you look at this stateless widget, obviously nothing will really happen here. So let's just remove it here. I'm going to remove this one. And let's place that footer widget after this button. So we know now that every time I click on male plus or female plus, this build method will rebuild the whole user interface here. So if I go down, it will rebuild everything that's not a constant. So this text widget, if I try to make it a constant, it will say you cannot because male counter can change it. So it cannot be a const. So that one will be rebuilt. This one will be rebuilt. But the sized box, I can actually make a const, which means that it will cache that sized box and it will not rebuild it but reuse it. My material button, I cannot set it as a const because there's a function part of it. So that one will be rebuilt. This size box, yes, I can add a const there and it will be just cached. It will not be rebuilt, but the material button will be rebuilt. And because this footer widget, the whole footer widget, is also a const, it will also not be rebuilt, but just be reused. So this is where performance comes in. If you can have some of your widgets as constants instead of just normal widgets. So wherever you can, when you're using a stateless widget, see if you can have a const constructor and as many as possible inside of it as constants. So by having this list a constant, the icon, the text, and this icon will also be a constant. And that's why I can then go and say, this whole footer widget should be a constant footer widget. Right now, let's look at extracting widgets. So let's say, for example, this material button that we have there, this one I want to extract now because I can see I'm doing exactly the same things there as that I'm doing there. So I'm repeating myself in coding. So there's two ways of extracting widgets. So I can use the control button or the command button on a Mac, hold it down and push the dot. And then if you go down, you can see there's extract widget and extract method. So let's look at these two quickly. So let's say I'm extracting a widget now. Let's call this widget my own button. Now it's going to give me a problem. And it says the reference to an enclosing class method cannot be extracted. The right to male counter cannot be extracted. So it gives me a problem here on this setState. So for now, I'm just going to cut out that part so that that method is empty. And let's try that again. So I'm going to go to extract widget. I'm going to say my own button. And you can see it replaced it now with that. And there's my class. My own button is a stateless widget. Now you can see it's got a const constructor automatically. Okay, so I'm going to remove this part and let's create our own constructor there. So we've got my own button. So what do I want to pass into this my own button? What I want to set is this function, the onPressed, and I also want to set the text for the button. So I'll have two things there. I'll have a function that we're going to call, let's say, onTap. And we'll also have a string there for the text. Now in the constructor, I will have named arguments, and I'm going to use the @required keyword there and say this dot onTap and @required again, this dot text. So what we're basically saying is this class called my own button will accept in a function called onTap and will accept in the text that we want to place on the button. So we want to have that text on the button, and when the button gets clicked, what should happen? That's the function. Okay, so now we can make these two final because they will not change. So when we're passing in the method, nothing will change on that method, and if we pass in the text, nothing will change. Okay, so now in this onPress there, I'm going to have this function there on tap, and in this text part there, I will use that text that was passed in. Right, so what happens? We're going to have my own button. It's going to accept a function and the text. We're going to set the function as the onPressed, and we're going to set the text as the text. And now you can see at the top where we were using it, it tells us that the parameter text is required and onTap is required. So let's go and use onTap. It will be an anonymous function. So just an opening and closing brackets, round brackets, and then your curly brackets. And inside of that, I'm going to say set the state for the mail counter. And then the other one that's required is the text property. And the text property will be mail plus. Now, if I save this again, you will see actually nothing happened on that button. Still the same button, but it's now called my own button. It's a stateless widget, my own button. It's got a const constructor. Now let's see what we can make constants here. This text, if I try to make that a constant, it will not allow me to make it a constant because of the change in that text variable. The text style, yes, we can make a constant, so make it a constant. And that's basically all we can make a constant there. So if we save now, what you can try and go and do is to see if you can make this my own button also a constant, but you will see it was not allowed because of the method there. So if you're accepting in a method, you cannot make that a constant. So this is as efficient as we will get for this specific button. Okay, so this is extracting a stateless widget. Now let's try and extract the same for this button. But remember, we can actually reuse it by using that same part there again and just passing in female and using female counter. But let me just show you the other option that we have also. So we've got another option. Instead of saying extracting a widget, we also have extract a method. Now let's click on extract method, and we can call that one build material button. That's fine. And you can see it adds the method call in there. That method returns back a material button, so it's fine. Right, so let's see if it runs. If I click on male, you can see it works. If I click on female, everything works. So everything still works. So what is the difference now between the stateless widget that we extracted and this method? Both of them help us to not repeat our code. But which one is better? So if you look at performance, always try to rather extract it as a widget instead of extracting it as a method. So why do I say that? When you extract a widget, you can make the constructor a constant, which means that at the end, you can actually say const my own button there, which means in the build method, it can actually only build it once, and it can reuse that. For example, where we had this footer now. So this footer widget has got a const constructor. In a method, you cannot have a const constructor. That's impossible. So when we have this for the footer widget, it's impossible to have this for a normal method, which means that this part will be built only once and then reused. Whereas with a method, there cannot be any const constructor, even though it's returning back a widget called material button. It will be rebuilt every single time this build method runs. And you will never get to something that can be reused instead of rebuilt the whole time. So whenever you can, try to extract a widget instead of a method. So I'm going to delete this method, and let's just go back, and we will rather build a my own button again, where the onTap will be setState, female counter, ++, and the text will be female plus. And just remember your comma at the end. So if we save this again, we've got my own button 2 times. One is for the male, one is for the female, and now everything should still work as normal. Right, so performance-wise, try to have as many constant declarations of your widgets inside of your widget tree as you can. When you're extracting widgets, or when you're extracting, rather extract as a widget and not as a function or a method, unless you really need to. Now, for the last thing, if we look at our buttons, let's say we wanted to pass something into this buttons there. Let's say just some text. Let's say text, and we want to set some text as hello world. We want to pass that in to the buttons class. So then we would have a constructor for the buttons class that looks like that. And if possible, you can even make that one a const constructor, but you cannot have a const constructor for a state class. That will never happen. Right, so inside this, we will need to have the text property. So I'm going to say string text. And then inside of this buttons, we will have a named parameters, and it will be required. And we're going to say this dot text. And then it will moan about it because we need to make this final. Okay, so when we pass in that text hello world, it goes into the buttons constructor and it sets the text. So you can see that it opens the class there and it closes the class there. So how do I get to this text parameter there inside of my coding? So if I want to use that text there, let's say inside of the setState there, I want to print something, or inside of this buttons tab, I want to print out hello world there. How do I get to that text? So if I just start typing text there, you can see it doesn't pick it up. So in order for you to get to this text there at the top, inside of your state class, you will refer to widget dot, and you can see the text gets picked up. So widget means it's the widget of this state class, which is the buttons class, and it will go to there and it will get your text. So you're going to say widgets or widget dot text, and that's how you refer to it. Right, and that's it then for this video on state and the difference between a stateless and a stateful widget. And I really hope that after this video, which is quite long, that you understand the difference between a stateful widget and a stateless widget. See you in the next one.